Welcome to St Aldhelm's Head on the Jurassic coast on a beautiful winter's afternoon. So Wendy and I did a walk here a couple of weeks ago and logged this location with this fabulous view along this sweeping coastline. And I've come back to do a shoot here. I'm utilising this little gully here for foreground interest, and of course this time of year in mid-January, short days, the sun setting well to the south of west, we get lovely side lighting on the Jurassic coast. So I'm hoping for a bit of cloud to drift into the frame. At the moment it's virtually clear sky. Lovely light but no cloud, but we landscape photographers are never happy, are we? Shooting with the 5DSR this afternoon to get that full 50 megapixel high resolution image. Not much wind around this afternoon, which is good, so I won't have to worry about wind buffeting. So when I'm considering what lens to use, I always think it's best to actually make the decision about the perspective, the balance between foreground and background before even unzipping the camera bag. I want an angle of view which incorporates the gully in my foreground and the coast beyond. If I go too wide, that coast in the distance will be lost, and it's obviously the quintessential element to this picture. So I'm going to start by looking at a focal length around about 35 millimeter. So I'm going to use my 24-70 to start with and see how that looks. That's a really balmy winter's afternoon with not a breath of wind. Normally on this incredibly exposed headland we'd be blown away here. Still, I was here a week or so back trying to make this shot, and I had a fantastic sky and no light. This afternoon we've got beautiful light but no interest in the sky. That's the way it goes. So over there is Swire Head, and last winter I did a shoot from up on that head in really high winds, but this time of year this kind of light but more interest in the sky, but really high winds, so I had to shoot handheld with a high ISO and rely on image stabilization. But it was a similar kind of situation, using the long lens to compress the perspective and looking down on Kimmeridge Bay with the whole sweep of the Jurassic coast beyond. I'll never forget that afternoon. So my PhotoPills app is telling me that sunset today will be at 16:25, which is about 45 minutes time. Now I think what often happens here is that the sun settles into the haze out in the channel and fizzles out maybe 20 minutes before sunset, so I need to be ready for that. Quite frankly, I don't think I'm going to get the shot that I was after this afternoon. The lack of interest in the sky sees to that, but I'll just have to come back. That's the way it goes. Really, when it comes down to it, you've just got to make the most of what Mother Nature gives you at the time, and it's just fabulous being here, quite frankly. Getting a bit cool now, so I think it's time for the hat. Now what I've got here set on the front of the lens is a polarizing filter, because with the sun going down over there, side lighting the scene here, it's a classic case for a polarizer. The polarizer will help to eliminate a little bit of the haze and really saturate the colors in the shot. Okay, so what I need to do now is focus, and I'm going to use autofocus. The scene is so distant, I don't need to worry about depth of field. I can use an aperture, a mid-range aperture, in this case f8. I'm going to use autofocus, and then once I've focused the image, I can then switch autofocus off, and I don't need to worry about that again now. So I'm going to do a test shot and assess my exposure. So that's the shot, and there's the histogram coming up, and you can see the histogram display here. I've got the option to dial in a bit of positive exposure compensation to move that whole display to the right. What I want to do is give as much exposure as I can without endangering my highlights. That way I'm maximizing the amount of information I'm recording, both tonal and color information. So I'll go back to live view, I dial in plus 2/3 exposure compensation, do the shot now, and you can see that's moved the histogram nicely to the right there. I'd say that's a perfect exposure. I could possibly give it a third stop more even. The light's starting to fizzle out now, so I really need to make sure I get this done. The sun's dipping into the cloud now, as you can see, so that's it, game over for this afternoon. This shoot hasn't worked out the way I hoped it would do, but as always, perseverance will triumph. I'll just have to come back and try again. So back again for the third time. I'm just hoping perseverance will pay off. So back again, fabulous sky, real mood to it this afternoon, and the odd patch of sun coming through, so I'm really hopeful. But we've got a big problem, the wind, which is buffeting the camera visibly. I think what I'm gonna have to do is shoot handheld. There's just so much wind around. So I've raised the ISO to 400, and I'm gonna be shooting with an aperture around about f5.6 to give me a fast enough shutter speed to isolate the wind buffeting. So I've got my polarizing filter on again for when the sun does come through, and I've got a 0.6 neutral density grad medium on to hold back the sky there. It's given quite a moody looking preview on the back here. All I need is a little glimmer of light. Shooting a time-lapse sequence at the moment, but because of the wind buffeting I'm having to hold the tripod down. 300 frames at 1 frame a second, which ends up as a 5-second sequence. Beats spending the afternoon sat in front of a computer, doesn't it? So now the sky is virtually clear, apart from just a few fluffies. I preferred the sky half an hour ago. It had much more mood. So I'm changed lenses, going in on a long lens perspective here to compress up those headlands. The sky's less interesting now, so I'm going to go tighter in and hopefully get dappled light on the headlands there. But of course, with the wind buffeting, I'm going to have to use image stabilization and a relatively fast shutter speed to keep things sharp. Just gorgeous light this afternoon. It's only about 4 p.m. Probably only got a few minutes left, but I'm really glad I persisted with this shot. It's come together beautifully. Just great being here, love it. The Jurassic coast in the winter is just so dramatic.